I'm going to be introducing the next step for our workshops. I'm Simone. I'm from Learning Futures. I work with Sheila and Espen and Michael and various other folk that you'll see kicking around here today, which is cool. So first up in the session, we've actually got Bill Wade, who is from the USQ Hive, the Educators in Residence program. So Bill is the Manager of Educational Futures at the University of Southern Queensland. So Bill, over to you to take us away.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Simone. It's great to be here with all of you, and good to see people joining. A few other people might join in. I've been working at University of Southern Queensland, managing all kinds of different portfolios related to educational futures. And one that I've really enjoyed over this last year has been our Hub for Immersive and Virtual Experiences, which we fondly know as the USQ Hive. So today I'm going to take you through a little bit of what we've been doing to build the Hive, which is really about our capacity building, our infrastructure and resources, and then take you through the other side, which is our capability building, which is investing in people. I actually chose this particular topic for ACODE because I knew we'd see a lot of technology and really interesting, exciting things. And what a fantastic keynote presentation and the quickfire sessions just showing us what colleagues are doing on various projects. But I've been in this game for quite a long time in Canada and in Australia, 30 years in ed tech. And I've come to realize that once we peel back some of the technology and the novelty's gone and the project budgets have run out, what remains are people. And so I'm very, very interested in how we can have a sustainable adoption of virtual and immersive experiences and approaches to learning and teaching, and how we can have a mechanism that will get us past the novelty curve. So that's kind of the idea. I've shared a few links in the chat window, and there will be some things to peek at virtually as we go. I'm just going to share my screen now, and just a great thumbs up if people can actually hear me all right. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to just have a quick peek at how we've been building capacity and capability, and this has all happened in the context since we actually ran the last ACODE forum. So a lot of the ideas in that came through since then. Okay, next slide, please. So what did we really need to do? Well, I will explain that we launched in April 2019. We wanted to bring a system or a hub to USQ. And so we started out in 2017 to 2018, thinking about our people, our teaching and learning, and also our context at USQ, which we have 70% of our students study online. So, and the other 30% don't often make it to campus. So they're in a blended environment, also using the same online style resources. So that was very significant. So we went out and consulted and said, what would a hub look like? And what would you need to learn, you know, and what would you be interested in? So of course, the other side of it is, yeah, we got some money to build our capacity. So purchase equipment, and we did that through 2018 and used the EDUCAUSE listing of all the cool stuff that was available. So much like you guys, you know, it's sort of the same thing. We have the headsets, all different kinds, everything that's available. Lately, we've gotten into the Quest. We also bought thousands of these beautiful cardboards, because we realized we're not going to be able to send out Oculus Go or Quests to 20,000 students, but we've sent out about 3,000 or 4,000 of these cardboard headsets for people to interact with. So we got our equipment purchased, lots of planning and development, and in April 2018, we launched the USQ Hub for Immersive and Virtual Experiences, and some of that was a week-long event with all kinds of workshops and things. So we sort of tried to practice what we preached, and a lot of it was online. In July, we launched our very first Educator in Residence program, and I'll speak to that in a little bit more detail. Finally, as you would expect, we did a year-end wrap-up, and then 2020 hit us, just like all of you. We're sort of sitting in that COVID-19 environment. And it's both stalled some of the stuff that we can do physically in our physical on-campus Hive, but it's also accelerated some other use case scenarios. And as our keynote presented this morning, this environment that we're in right now is certainly pushing people to make an effort to see what kind of affordances virtual and immersive experiences can provide. Next slide, please. So before I launch in, I really want to thank ACODE for having a forum like this, and all of you colleagues for your generous sharing. In that week in April 2019, we launched the Hive, and I just wanted to point out a few people and say thank you to James Burt, Jason Zagami, and Daryl Clare. Some of you will remember them from the last one. I don't know whether they're here this session, but they actually did workshops and online sessions to help us launch the Hub for Immersive and Virtual Experiences. We had Sarah and Ellen coming in. They also support us on campus. And thank you to Neil Martin and Clinton Codell. Again, also a real standout for the Griffith Uni colleagues, Michael and Sheila and the team that have really been pushing us to really explore this space and share what we're doing as a sector. And you'll see on screen there that there are some recordings of those workshops. So if you missed some, have a look in there. There's some real gold in those 45-minute recorded sessions, particularly from Jason and Daryl. Next slide, please. So what's the Hive? So we wanted to create a particular space that was physical. So we do have a physical room, but also because we have multiple campuses, we wanted to make sure we had a mobile space so that we could get the idea of immersive and virtual approaches in learning and teaching out across all our campuses. And of course, as you'd expect, we have a virtual space, so an online web site where people can collaborate, meet with us, and engage with online workshops, much like we're doing today. Next slide, please. So the Hive really served a strategic role. So apart from getting a whole bunch of really cool equipment and gear and emerging technology, we wanted to demonstrate some leadership and innovation in the quality of the student experience. And that really drove us centrally to think about, well, what kind of equipment do we need and how do we want to approach this whole space of VR, AR, and XR, because it's pretty behemoth, but we needed to focus it. And we did focus around the quality of the student experience in online learning. Obviously, we want to leverage emerging technology. We want to support enterprise-wide initiatives, and we've done really cool things like having virtual career fairs where we hook up our students with employers in a virtual space and set them up for volunteer practicums to extend their employability skills. Finally, we wanted to support research excellence at USQ as well, and that was one of the strategic drivers. Thanks, Sheila, or Simone, thank you. So we wanted to have a hub that had a slightly different ethos. I don't know about you guys, but everything we seem to do is so loaded with KPIs and outcomes and measurements. And some of our staff are getting a bit tired of engaging in new things when there's just so many strings attached. So our ethos for the Hive was, could we actually on our campus have an exploratory space without a whole bunch of strings attached? It's hard to commit to an outcome and a key performance indicator if you really don't even know what the technology affordances actually are. So we wanted to have that exploratory space, have it very ideas focused. We wanted to make sure that it was a space also for research and scholarship, but ultimately, and I really credit Neil Martin for pushing this as hard as he could, that we have a go, do not fear failure approach, because a lot of things we're going to look into, just we knew what wouldn't really pan out. They might not solve a learning and teaching challenge. Next, please. So that's the Hive. So we made this room, and we've held regular events in it, open days. We've got around to all our campuses for mobile visits. We launched up the Educator in Residence. We've had all kinds of showcases. We're there, as you can expect. We're at open days. We're kind of like our colleagues from University Sunshine Coast who have the cave there. We're generally doing a tour a day in the Hive and showing people what's available. we really actually discovered too that we could use the Lightboard to enhance teacher presence, and that was really immersing our teachers in the learning environment so that our study desk and online Moodle site had much more presence from our instructors. Again, we have, like most of you have described throughout today, equipment lending so that our students and staff can actually get their hands on various things. Next slide, please. So what we do? Well, last year we had over 450 visitors, all kinds of recorded webinars and salon sessions, held special interest groups, so a community of practice with monthly meetings. We also presented the USQ Hive at the Cross Institutional Design Forum in June. And on we go. We visited Griffith. We've had sector visits from QUT. 14 educators and residents graduated in December. So just describing all these outcomes. But again, the focal point isn't a tick box of all this stuff we've done. It's really about investing in our people strategically so USQ staff and students can have an excellent experience. Next, please. So before I go into the educator and residents in a little bit more detail, I wanted to just very quickly show you what the USQ Hive looks like. And I did post a SeekBeak URL in the chat window there that says the physical hive at USQ Toowoomba campus. And I guess, Simone, if you could actually go to that and share that, unless I can.
If you want to give that sharing a go, Bill, I'm more than happy to cede to you.
All right, I'm going to share. Hey, welcome to the USQ Hive. Okay, so this, you know, we can talk about it, but let's just have a physical look at the room we built. And listen, I realize most of you have, you know, you've got spaces like this, but we sort of set it up like a teaching lab. So there's a USQ Lightboard. We spin over this way. There's a whole workstation where people can work with headsets and 360-degree video and experiment. Spin a little bit further. We start getting into more complicated stuff. So 3D learning objects. And we've been using Sketchfab. And that's what our educators and residents found really handy once they created the 3D object. Should I just show that to you? So this is called SeekBeak, this little program, and our educators and residents found it really, really useful to create panoramic 360 tours and then be able to augment it because these are all clickable. So any asset you already have can be repurposed. In this case, this is a 3D model that was scanned in of a, well, I wonder if anybody knows what kind of skull that is. We originally 3D printed these things and sent out kits to our anatomy and archaeology students. And now in the online space, we're using 3D learning objects. So most of you are probably familiar. You can scan and that you can click in, augment, pull up additional resources. So for us, it might seem simple to some of you, but how amazing for our students to really get their hands on all kinds of equipment, samples, and resources in a virtual way that they can manipulate and that can link on to other things. So in our USQ Hive, when people explore the physical space, we have samples and examples of all of these different kinds of things. So any questions just on what you're seeing there in front of you right now? Welcome to the physical hive at USQ.
Ben's asked if it's an Oculus Go that you're using there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the Go, the Quest, the HTC Vive, and a Rift, and we have multiple sets of that. So we keep some loaded in Pelican briefcases out for loan and also for when we take around to the campuses. We're finding limitations with the Go. I've really pushed the Go to the limit. I've used a little tool called the Moment 360 Crystal Viewer just to try to get the resolution of what we can see on the Oculus Go up a bit higher. And I think we've sort of pushed it to as much as we can, and we're looking more towards the Quest now. And in fact, I think the Oculus Go, if I'm not mistaken, is discontinued Let's go see. Oculus Go is no longer available. So there you go. I guess we're all heading towards the Quest.
Now, the other question they're all asking, they're taking bets on what the skeleton was. So if the skull was a sheep, a horse, or a wallaby.
Ah, nice on the wallaby. Yeah, it was in fact a wallaby. And listen, this is a lovely extension of something that we've done, because we, like I said, in previous innovation demonstrators, we've printed out kits and we've mailed them out to students, and we found, oh, you know, the feedback from the students was it was kind of cool for about 5 minutes, but you didn't really need to go through all the fuss to actually do that. And so we've found the use of the 3D learning object for our distance students probably has more affordance. So again, we have all this capacity now. We've got all these toys, equipment. We've got about 10 Alienware laptops, a special high-powered Mac. We've got merged cubes. Do you see that really funky little blue T-shirt there? That's Alan wearing an anatomy T-shirt. So if you hold up your device, you can actually see his heart and lungs and everything beating while he wears a T-shirt. So playing around with all kinds of really neat, clever things. So the Educator in Residence program was this idea of putting out an expression of interest where educators could present a learning and teaching challenge they wanted to address, possibly, and I emphasize possibly, with immersive and virtual experiences or approaches. A lot of them didn't really know what the capabilities were. And this is Michael Sankey's graphic for the day, you know, the proverbial cart before the horse. We actually wanted a technology and learning and teaching question to drive their expression of interest and why they wanted to participate as an educator in resident. 14 came in and 14 were successful. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll just sort of explain what happened. All right, so as I mentioned, 14 colleagues from all various schools, nursing, engineering, humanities, and that. We wanted to have a very low stakes exploration, as I've mentioned. The participants had to articulate a challenge, and we ran over 16 weeks. We ran 8 sessions, for example, how to use 360-degree cameras and video. So they got their hands on equipment and gear. Now, we didn't want them to suck on lemons if they already knew how to do something, because some had already used 360-degree cameras. So out of the 8 sessions, the educator in residence only needed to participate in 4 to meet the requirements. We wanted some requirements because they were given a stipend. So they were successful and were given $1,500 to spend on equipment so they could continue to apply what they've learned in their teaching and learning practice. We surveyed halfway, midway through the experience, and at the end of the session just to see how we went, and they really had a positive experience. May I say, colleagues, too, the number one thing that kept coming through was that they appreciated being able to take part in a program where the stakes were fairly low for them, where it accepted the fact that they weren't yet experts and they were actually emerging in terms of their capability and skills. And so that really came through. They also liked having the stipend so they could buy some equipment, and every one of them unanimously would recommend the program on to a fellow colleague. A great outcome is that many of them just became champions, and so they have little clusters and groups in their discipline areas, and they're showing them how to use things, and those people aren't even coming into the Hive to learn how, because their colleagues in their schools are helping them. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry, as I mentioned, each of them had to articulate a challenge, and if you could just keep pressing the button there, the challenges will pop up for me, Simone. Keep going. So the kind of things are not surprising that they discovered. They wanted to enhance their presence and social presence, senses of belonging in the online environment. A big task was to help students overcome placement anxieties and fears, because some of them, though they're online students, in their programs, they have to come in for a residential component. So being able to take them to their labs and spaces so that they could actually see the environment they'll be coming into ahead of time. And this semester, that's actually in action, and the students are absolutely loving the pre-exposure to labs and scenarios. And certainly in the COVID-19 environment, that's becoming very, very helpful. So those are the kind of questions and challenges they faced. Next slide, please. So one of the things we needed to do, and the educators and residents did, wanted to see what the student response was to 360-degree virtual tours, like the SeekPeek one I showed you of the USQ Hive, as well as labs and tours. So we sent out, like I said, thousands of headsets, and we had some a PhD student who's studying the response and adoption to 360-degree video. So the cardboard and that. Interestingly, and I don't know what you guys are finding, our students, roughly about half seem to be quite willing to surrender their reality for a virtual reality or immersive experience and put on a headset. The other half are saying this is not really for them. They just prefer to look at it using their phone or their laptops. So consequently, we needed, and what we discovered is if we're going to make things, they have to be device agnostic. That we need to make resources and experiences that can cross across many different types of devices. So big learnings there for us. Stepping down, please, next slide. The other thing that was very interesting to the educator residents was how we could actually work with objects and use AR tools. So out of all the things we showed them, 360 video and more higher end VR. On the higher end VR, most of them said, listen, our students aren't going to have a Vive. They're not going to have the equipment. And so we didn't really go that far down that avenue. 360-degree video was and 360-degree images with being able to overlay assets, as well as these augmented reality tools, the Merge Cube and the T-shirts idea. So when students come on campus, they can put T-shirts on and actually physically see what they're needing to explore together. So those are some of the early things that we found. We're probably coming up to Q&A time now. I could show you a couple more things, but really happy to take on board some questions. And while we're doing that, if you wouldn't mind, there's a little poll out there that I've put out together in Socrative, just to see what other institutions are doing to build capacity and capability. So we could have a little bit of discussion around that in our question and answer time. So if you can go out to that Socrative poll, it's basically you go to socrative.com and log in as a student. And if you actually go down a slide, Sheila, I think it will show people what those links look like.
Thanks, Bill. I've also added that into the chat for folks.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. Thanks very much for that.
Sheila, are there any questions?
Sorry, yes, Simone. There's one from Hugh Gormley there. How many staff, Bill, do you have that work in the Hive with the educators in residence?
Yeah, well, that's always a good one, isn't it? So mainly there was myself and Dr. Neil Martin as the two leads for the USQ Hive. At the time, I was also supervising 6 learning designers. And so the learning designers showed a lot of interest in the Hive and were trained. Particularly, we focused on them all knowing how to use the USQ Lightboard and helping some of their staff enhance teaching presence and worked examples and things like that. Now, do people know what a lightboard is? It's basically a glass clear whiteboard version. You can write on it and it glows and looks really, really cool. But more importantly, you're right in there, you know, in a friendly way, explaining things to your students. So 6 of them, 2 of us, and then we had 1 casual technician that we were able to hire up until December. That was Alan Tay, and he was available. So pretty lean skeleton crew right now, and why we really need the educators and residents as they're trained up to become the champions for their areas and take the you know, the skills and affordances out there to their colleagues.
Awesome.
Absolutely, and we're really starting to see that model more and more, aren't we, across higher education institutions for sure. Poor academics at the end of the day, but thank God they're innovative and they're with us, Bill.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Fantastic. There's another question here. Everyone's interested in the staff. Are the staff dedicated to the hub, or is it just an additional part of their actual jobs?
Our casual hire was specific to the Hive, okay? And for myself and Neil, it's part of our regular duties. But so you know, we all have sort of performance planning scenarios, and 50% of my time was committed to the USQ Hive in that capacity, and would be similar for Neil. So if you actually added up the human time, it would have been about 1.5 hours. But what we did as well is we had the educators in residence all, once they got across a piece of technology, let us know if they'd be willing to be champions themselves. And so we had about 3 or 4 who were really quite skilled at a number of different technologies, and they became sort of champion and buddies, and they literally booked the space themselves and brought colleagues in and things like that. So it became a bit organic that way. So kind of hard to measure, but really 1.5 FTE, if somebody's trying to do the calculations, is really what was invested in 2019 to get this going.
Yeah, that's amazing, and sounds about right across all the institutions, to be honest.
Yeah.
I hope we see some more play in that. It might be one thing we've got COVID, can thank COVID for. We'll see, won't we? Another interesting aspect to this might be the larger community around this. The educators in residence, do they host a group themselves, or is that primarily done by you guys as part of that Hive experience?
Well, actually, covertly, yes, many of them do. For example, the nursing crew. So we probably had about 5 people who were involved with nursing. And the nursing group, they kind of created their own small community of practice and worked together across the 3 campuses to build, sort of simulated labs and scenarios. So some of that happened organically. But ultimately, we have a special interest group approach. And Neil and I generally host that. We would love to see our educators in residence, who we now call educators in practice, host some of the special interest group things, but we're still negotiating that one in this COVID-19 environment.
Absolutely hear you there. Another one's come through from Lee. Thank you, Lee. Did projects from the Educators in Residence program have any continuing outcomes and progress? It does sound like they did.
Absolutely. Listen, this is what's really exciting. So this was done in semester 2, 2019. So what needed to happen then, of course, was, well, now let's put them in situ and let's try them out in semester 1, 2020. And what's happened is, one of our educators in residence was so interested in it, she's enrolled to into the PhD program and is studying the whole application of VR in nursing education. 2 of our educators in residence were from the Faculty of Education. And one of the exciting things that they've done is that they've gone on to take the ideas that they've learned and apply for the next level learning and teaching scholarships and grants that we offer at USQ. And that was to really explore the intersection of arts and history in teacher education. So they're looking at a whole approach to creating VR tours of historical spaces and how teachers can have students work in community to sort of build and create historical and meaningful spaces. And so they've applied for some grants that looks like it's going to be successful. And the third spin-off, and this is what I think is really, really cool, is we have an open textbook network membership. So USQ is quite involved in the open educational resource space. And I think we're the first Australian member of the open textbook network. And so what's happened is a number of our staff are actually building open textbooks to reduce the cost for students. And what's really cool is the open textbook tool we use called Pressbooks has an H5P plugin. And the H5P plugin allows 360-degree video to be played and embedding all kinds of media-rich assets. So of course, they're building textbooks and they want the Wallaby jaw to pop up off the page and things like that. So they're running a project to experiment with how we can make our open textbooks much more media rich through augmented reality. So we've always seen the Hive as an incubator, a place where you can learn, explore, conceive ideas, and then it's an incubator to going on for further scholarship and larger scale projects. Make sense?
Absolutely does, Bill. It's just amazing what you've been able to do. And I think apart from all the amazing projects, as you say, what you're actually building are pathways for people, whether they're students, whether they're academics, or whether they're going for grants as researchers as well. So amazing work there. Can't thank you enough. Oh yeah, and a thank you for the heads up on the tools from Steve as well. I figure anyone who's working with H5P about now is already looking up, you know, press books immediately. So thank you for that, Bill. I'm going to hand across, and everyone open your mic and please thank Bill on behalf of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.